Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about TNA Impact from September 16th. Share my thoughts on what I thought about this show. You really have to have your head on straight to watch a TNA episode these days. They do some stuff right, some stuff you get excited about. They do a lot of stuff wrong. When it's wrong, though, you're really like... It's hard to itemize how many things are wrong with the stuff they do wrong. It's just the show gets so off track so quickly, and you get so disappointed. I personally have so much hope for TNA. I really want TNA to succeed. It's good for pro wrestling. It's good for all the wrestlers who work for TNA. It's good for the WWE. It's good for ROH. It's good for pro wrestling. And yeah, they just keep failing at so many things. And when it happens, I just feel like, again... Thanks. Let's get to the show. Kicked off with just like an overdose of praise for Kurt Angle and Jeff Hardy. TNA never fails to pat themselves on the back for something. They are the clear number 2 in professional wrestling, yet they act like they are the WWE's equal, and they're not. They have not earned that right to be equal. But they put on what was apparently a great match between Angle and Hardy at No Surrender. I personally have not seen the match, but of course it ended in controversy with 2 straight time limit. Or it ended with the time limit, whatever time limit. I think it was a 30-minute time limit, and then 2 5-minute overtime periods both ended with no winner. So a lot of fans were really upset about that. They decided to immediately address the issue, but in the process, Eric Bischoff and Dixie Carter practically made out with Jeff Hardy and Kurt Angle. They just could not stop praising them. The drone fans in the audience were just like all over these two, praising them. Everybody just needs to back up a bit. It was one wrestling match. It also didn't decide anything, and there was no winner. So everybody needs to calm down. Eric Bischoff decided to make it a 3-way match at Bound for Glory between Angle, Hardy, and Anderson, but he was then trumped by Dixie Carter. Who's really running this company? I really don't understand how the owner gets trumped by Hulk Hogan, who has no official title, and then Eric Bischoff is like an executive consultant or something, but he gets to make decisions too, but is then trumped by the owner. So I guess the pecking order is Hogan, Carter, Bischoff, 1, 2, 3. But every week it just seems whatever's convenient to create the story. There's no consistency, no continuity. It's very frustrating, very hard to follow. If I'm a passive fan, I have no idea who's in charge of this show, and that's really frustrating. Almost as frustrating as having a general manager who emails the show. So the first match of the show was Kevin Nash and Samoa Joe going one-on-one. Joe has been sucked into the seniors feud. This is the equivalent of watching the senior PGA Tour, only they hit each other instead of golf balls. The match didn't go anywhere. There was interference by Sting, but the ref just kind of watched it. So Jeff Jarrett interfered, and then the ref just decided to count to 10 and call it a day. So that made no sense whatsoever. Nothing happened here. The brawl went on for way too long, too. We get it. They're brawling. Nothing was settled. More to come. 10, 10, 10 at Bound for Glory. You don't have to brawl for 10 minutes also to get that point across. So I was kind of frustrated by that. Then we had the best match on the show, in my opinion. I should take that back. Second best match. The main event was great. Second best match on the show for the X Division crown. Jay Lethal wins the X Division title, knocking off Douglas Williams. This was actually a pretty decent match. Went a little bit longer than a lot of the TNA matches go as of late, too. Lethal went over, which really surprised the hell out of me. He's been pretty much AWOL from Impact for quite some time now, as has Douglas Williams in a wrestling capacity. Williams has been tagging along with Fortune lately, but not really necessarily wrestling on Impact. So yeah, decent match. I'm excited that Jay Lethal's the champ. I want to see where this goes. They tied it into the Fortune feud with Fortune losing a little bit of power. I don't know how much power the X Division title actually holds right now, but I'm excited to see where this goes, and hopefully Lethal isn't squashed by Matt Morgan next week or something ridiculous like that. Then they had the women's tag titles on the line. The Knockouts tag belts were on the line as Taylor Wilde and Hamada took on Madison Rayne and Lacey Von Erich. This was actually a pretty decent match, too. Lacey did a lot of the work for the heels, while Wilde and Hamada are a really fun tag team. So I really enjoyed this match. I liked the way they told the story, the feud between Beautiful People and Madison Rayne and Tara. They did a much better job this week of telling that story than they have in the last month or two as a whole. They had Madison Rayne basically barking at Lacey throughout the match, telling her what to do and pushing her around. This came to a head after they lost the match when Madison decided to take it out on Lacey, and Lacey fought back and chose sides with the original Beautiful People, Angelina and Velvet. So Lacey and Madison are now no longer on the same team. Madison and Tara look to be facing off with the Beautiful People 3-on-2 going forward. But the story made a lot more sense, and it was told in a creative and interesting way that also tied into a legitimate match. So much happier with the way they went about doing that this week as opposed to all the brawls, catfights, and boobs that we've had in the last few weeks. Then Tommy Dreamer decides to basically, I don't want to be graphic. I'm sure my buddy Miles has a much more graphic way of depicting this, but Tommy Dreamer basically kissed the feet of Fortune. He called out Fortune, minus anybody from EV2, and basically one by one went down the line with Fortune and put each of them over. And he got beat up for doing that. So that made no sense. The only thing that I can really say makes sense here is that they're taking Tommy Dreamer's overness and sucking it dry to put over Fortune. You know, maybe that's Tommy Dreamer's call. Maybe that's what he thinks is the right thing to do to get these guys over. Ric Flair, you know, walks away the better man here. Tommy Dreamer is made to look like crap. I don't like the booking here. I don't understand where they're going with it. I don't like EV2 basically quitting their feud with Fortune, and then Fortune also getting to beat their asses for it. This was followed up by Brian Kendrick making the save on Tommy Dreamer and then challenging anyone from Fortune to a match. He winds up drawing Matt Morgan. Morgan beats the crap out of him for like 3-4 minutes, and then Kendrick hits one move, rolls him up, and wins the match. I actually kind of liked this. I kind of liked where this was going. I like the idea that Kendrick may be just crazy enough to challenge these people and actually beat them in matches. I'd love to see Kendrick possibly beat 2 or 3 more members of Fortune in some sort of we just can't beat this little guy type of scheme. But I really worry about where this is going. Matt Morgan is not over with the fans. The fans do not appreciate Matt Morgan, do not think very much of him as a wrestler. So him losing to Brian Kendrick does not bother me at all. I don't care, but it does not make a whole lot of sense to put him over the way they did with Tommy Dreamer and then have him beat so quickly. That it just kind of cancels out what you spent like 10, 15 minutes working on. So I don't understand that. Then you had the segments backstage. I wanted to make note of the segments backstage. I really like the way they're shooting their segments backstage now. Instead of just a camera with Christy Hemme and a microphone, you've got this documentary film style, whatever style of shooting the promos backstage now, and I really like that. It's very edgy, it's very raw, it seems more realistic, more believable, and it's giving some of these wrestlers the chance to hone some of their acting skills too, which I think comes off a little bit better instead of having them stand in front of a mic and point at you and make the same gestures. And I hate to draw on this reference, but look at the way Generation Me does their promo later in the show. That style of promo, they're moving away from that with some of the backstage segments, and I really like what they've been doing. So I just wanted to make note of that. Then Abyss was branding people backstage. I didn't see who those people were. Maybe I missed it, but it looked like they were nobodies, and he was branding 10-10-10 on their chests. That was just disturbing. I don't want to see that. That's not part of wrestling. That has nothing to do with anything professional wrestling. It's just weird and creepy and disturbing. This is not Saw 8. This is TNA Impact. Abyss needs to tone it down a bit, and Abyss needs to be fighting for a title. That's why he should be around. He should not be around to torture and stab people and brand them with numbers. I just think that I'm really concerned about the tangent they've run off with Abyss on that course. Then they interviewed RVD by phone. That was kind of boring. Then Generation Me cut a good promo, a very classic promo in the ring. Generation Me very quickly became heels. They're doing a good job, though. I kind of like what they did. Obviously, Generation Me that name plays up to the fact that they would be perfect heels. And so far, the Bucks are doing a really good job of playing that role. They beat up Chris Sabin. They took out Alex Shelley at No Surrender, and then they're beating up Chris Sabin. So I like where this is going. Generation Me basically saying they don't want the Machine Guns to be able to fight for a month so that they have to cough up the belt. So I kind of like what they're doing here. I want to see where this goes from here. But unfortunately, none of the other tag teams on the show even matter right now, which is kind of frustrating. Then the main event, Jeff Hardy versus Kurt Angle, was another fantastic bout between these two. The two ref situation was painfully obvious, painfully frustrating. Brian Hebner takes a huge bump. Then you know something crazy is going to happen. Earl Hebner decides to run out to the ring, and then Brian recovers. They both, count a pinfall on the other wrestler. So the Hebners fuck up the match. Typical Hebner crap. So both guys technically were pinned. There was no winner. Kurt Angle did not lose, so he gets to continue wrestling. My problem with this match is, first of all, they made me watch TNA Reaction in order to catch the end of the match. Finish it up in 2 hours. I think it's cool that you get to have an overrun and run into your show, and you're trying to promote your new crappy show where people just talk for an hour, but just finish the match, okay? Don't drag me into your other show. The match was really good, but it resolved nothing, and now it's a three-way Bound for Glory anyway. This really didn't make much sense. They insisted on it not being a three-way to open the show, and then it winds up being a three-way anyway. I don't like that booking. It's a kind of a waste of our time. You're basically saying the final 15 minutes that we watched were a waste of our time because we got the same result anyway. Shouldn't both these guys be counted out and Anderson be handed the championship? Shouldn't Anderson versus De Niro have been the championship and No Surrender? None of this stuff makes any sense. It's just, there's no continuity and no rules. There's no rules or guidelines in TNA. They break all their own rules all the time. It's so convoluted and so worked over. It's really frustrating as a fan. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Impact. From week to week, I truly worry about where this show is going. Who knows what's going to happen next week? They're obviously building towards Bound for Glory. They're building up that senior circuit feud with Jarrett, Sting, Nash, and unfortunately Joe. And they're building up now. They're officially going to have the three-way for the title, so they'll be able to build Angle, Hardy, Anderson. It's interesting that all three of them are going into this match as baby faces too. I don't know how that's going to work. They hinted that De Niro is pissed off that he's being left out of this equation, but they didn't really go anywhere with it on Impact. So I'll be interested to see what they do with De Niro. And then way too much exposure for Dixie Carter once again. Really dislike that. Taz was once again deplorable on the microphone. Mike Tenay's kind of caught up in Taz's comedy bits now too, which is really frustrating. So that's my thoughts on TNA Impact. I hope to get to SmackDown tomorrow. I gotta hit the hay. So I'll catch you all later, and I'll talk a little bit about SmackDown in the next video.